Hi, welcome to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to be doing a reading vlog for the Dirty Air series by Lauren Asher. I'm going to go through each of the books. Honestly, as of right now, I don't know too much about them. I kind of know some general tropes. I know who the main characters are of each book, but I really don't know much more information other than that, which I'm really glad because I love going into books not knowing anything. So yeah, first I'm just going to go through each of the books, kind of sharing the reading order for them. So obviously the first book is Throttled. This one follows Maya and Noah, and I know that he is like her brother's rival. That's all I know about this one. And then the second book is Collided. This one follows Liam and Sophie. I think Sophie is Maya's best friend, I'm pretty sure. And I think this one is kind of like a friends to lovers, like friends with benefits type story. Book 3 is Wrecked. This one follows Jax and Elena. I know nothing about this one at all. In one of the last two books, the girl is like a PR person. I'm not sure if it's this one or the fourth one, but I'm pretty sure one of these, it's like she works in PR. But this one, like I said, I don't know anything about it. I'm not even gonna bother reading anything about it because this is the only one where I have like no knowledge about it going into it, and I like that, so I'm just gonna keep it that way. And then the last book is Redeemed. This one follows Santiago and Chloe, and so he is Maya's brother. Maya is the main character from the first book, and I think this one is fake dating, possibly, but I'm not sure. I know one of the last two is fake dating, and I think it's this one. That's all I know about these books going into them. I don't know too much, but obviously as I go into them, I will kind of share a little bit of a more in-depth synopsis as I read them. Also, the biggest thing about this series is that it does follow Formula 1 drivers, so all the male main characters are F1 drivers. I know nothing about F1, so I'm kind of excited to like get into these because I don't have any F1 knowledge, and I've seen a lot of people actually get into Formula 1 after reading this series. I'm excited to get into them and kind of share all my thoughts on them and see how I feel about these books as I read them. And this video will be spoiler free, and there's also going to be timestamps for when I'm talking about each of the books. But yeah, let's just get into the video. So I'm now done with the first book, which is Throttled. So I'm going to kind of briefly share what it's about before going into my thoughts on it. I obviously didn't go super in depth earlier on what it's about, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'll do that with each of the books as I read them. So this book follows Noah and Maya. Noah is an F1 driver, and then Maya is his rival slash teammate's younger sister. So basically Noah and Maya's brother, his name is Santiago, they've had this rivalry between them for a couple years now. And so Santiago used to drive for a different team, but he just got signed to the Bandini team, which is the team that Noah has been driving for. So now the two of them are teammates, and this year Santiago is bringing along his sister Maya because she just graduated from college. So she doesn't really know exactly what she's going to do with her life, but she does want to start a vlog. So that's what she does. She just kind of follows him around. She's vlogging her whole experience, kind of traveling the world, and then she starts sharing stuff about F1. And so of course, as all of this is happening and she is spending time with her brother, she's also obviously spending time with Noah. Her brother kind of warns her to stay away from all the F1 drivers. He's very protective over her, but she's kind of starting to develop feelings for Noah, and obviously it's complicated because he is her brother's rival and teammate. But yeah, that's kind of a quick summary of what this book is all about. So now I'm going to go into my thoughts on it since I just finished it. Throttled, obviously it's the first in the series, and I feel like it's kind of the least favorite of the whole series. Like, I've seen so many mixed opinions for this book, and so I feel like this is kind of an unpopular opinion, but I really liked this one. I really enjoyed reading it. I thought it was a really good book. I first found out about this series 2 years ago, so I've been wanting to read it for like 2 years now, and I just never got to it. Before going into it, I was really excited for this book. Like, I thought it was going to be a book that I would really like, but I tried to like not really let other opinions I've seen about this book like affect my reading experience too much. Although I will say that going into it, I did feel like I was a little bit nervous for it. Like, I was nervous I wouldn't like it, but like I said, I ended up loving this book a lot. I just got really into this book, I feel like. I was listening to it, I was listening to the audiobook, so I think that might have helped with like actually getting into the book. But yeah, like I said, I just got really into it. Like, I kept wanting to pick it up and continue reading. And I just think it was a really interesting concept to me because I had never read a book that centered around F1 before. So it was something that was kind of just different and really interesting to me. And so I liked that. I liked that it was something kind of new for me, something that I had never read before, and I was able to kind of like dive into something new with this book. And it actually got me so interested in F1. I'm not like super knowledgeable on it at all at this point, but I genuinely was like interested in it and like wanting to know more and like actually kind of learn things and kind of learn what they were talking about. Honestly, I think I kind of mentioned that in the beginning of this video, but I didn't think I would actually get into it. But now I'm kind of actually liking it and like wanting to learn a little bit more about it. And I feel like what made me so interested in this book is that I had literally no knowledge on F1 before going into it. Like, I couldn't have told you anything about it before reading this book. So I think because I had no knowledge on it at all, like that's kind of why I got a little bit more invested and like actually wanted to know what was going on. Like with other sports, like I've read like hockey, baseball, basketball, football, soccer, and with those I feel like I have like some very basic knowledge of how the sports work. Like I have a very basic understanding of them, and so when I would read them, it didn't really bother me that I didn't know what every single term meant or like what they were talking about when they said or described certain things with the sports, and so I just kind of move on from them. But with this one, I actually like wanted to know, and so I like looked up TikToks just kind of like explaining the basics of F1, and then I feel like that helped with like actually reading the book, and like later on they would kind of go a little bit in depth into things that were going on like during the races, you know, like it would actually be described. And so like I was actually paying attention to it and reading it, and a lot of the time in sports romance books, honestly, I kind of just skim over the actual sports part, but with this one I was actually interested, like I wanted to know. And so I thought that was a really like good thing about this book, that it actually had me like invested in the sports part, like the F1 part, and I really liked kind of getting all the insight and all the details on the sport and like kind of how it works. Obviously, like I said, I don't have a ton of knowledge on F1 still, so I can't really speak to like the accuracy of it, but either way it still got me interested enough to where I was actually doing kind of a little bit more research on it and kind of trying to figure out how it works exactly. But on top of me actually enjoying the sports part of this book, I also really enjoyed the romance too. I thought it was so cute. Like they were just so cute together. I really liked them. Like there was just so many cute moments in this book between this couple, like the way they were with each other. I just really enjoyed reading their romance as well. I will say I'm not like obsessed with them. They're not like an all-time favorite book couple or anything for me, but they were just cute and I really liked them. Like I really enjoyed reading their relationship and the way that developed, and I also just really loved like the things he did for her. He went to therapy, and so I really loved that, like seeing him kind of want to be better and actually put in the effort to be better, not just for her but like for himself. Like he kind of did it for himself really, and I just liked how much he really liked her. But on top of their relationship, I also loved all the other relationships that you see in this book, and also the found family that you kind of start to see developing. We also meet Sophie, who is the main character for book 2, and so Maya and Sophie are best friends, and I really love seeing their friendship. And then in this book you do meet all the male main characters for this series. So Liam and Jax are the male main characters for the next 2 books, and then Santiago is obviously the main character of the 4th book. And so I liked kind of getting to know all these characters. I didn't realize that this series was going to kind of have like the found family aspect of it. I honestly thought these books were like all separate from each other. Like I knew they kind of connected and I knew they took place in the same world, but I didn't realize like all these characters were gonna kind of actually know each other and like be friends, and it was gonna be like a found family thing. And so I really like seeing kind of the start of that developing in this book. So yeah, I really loved reading this one. I loved kind of learning a little bit more about F1, and honestly like I don't really have anything negative to say about it. I kind of feel like it was just better than the way people were describing it. Maybe like seeing the negative reviews kind of lowered my expectations a little bit, so then the book ended up kind of exceeding my expectations since they were lowered. Like I said, I see a lot of mixed reviews for this book, and so I was kind of reading what people were saying, and one of the things I did see people say a lot is like the writing and the dialogue is like not that great at times. It's a little bit cringy, which I can see that. Like yeah, I can maybe like agree with that a little bit, but I did really like the book enough that that didn't really bother me. Another thing though, Noah, he is 30 years old in this book. He was like a little bit immature at times. Like he didn't really act like a 30-year-old, just like the way he kind of was. But I mean, I don't know, it didn't really bother me at all. Like I feel like he went through enough development that I was fine with it. And like I said, he goes to therapy, so that was a really great part of this book. But yeah, I didn't really expect to love this book as much as I did. I didn't go in thinking I would like hate it or anything, or that I would even dislike it. Like I was actually still really excited for it. I think I just really enjoyed like every aspect of this book. Obviously I went into it excited for like the romance because I love romance books, but then I just enjoyed everything else about it too. Like I liked their relationship, but the rest of the story was just as enjoyable to me. Obviously, like I said, I just really loved the whole like Formula 1 aspect of the story, but I also liked other things about it. I really liked that she was a blogger. I thought that was really interesting, and you obviously get to see them kind of traveling the world and going to all these new places, and so I really loved seeing that like kind of come into play into the story, and just seeing her job being a part of this and like the way that integrated with Noah's life and obviously her brother's life. But definitely check trigger warnings for this book though. There were times where it did go a little bit deeper and just more serious than I was expecting it to. But yeah, like I said, I really liked this book. I feel like this one was a good introduction to this series. I'm definitely excited to continue on with the rest of the books. And honestly, at this point, I can see this series becoming one of my favorites. But yeah, I ended up rating this one 5 stars because I just really loved it. I loved everything about it. I just thought it was a really good book. I just had a fun time reading it, honestly. So now I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next book. I'm gonna start reading Collided soon, so I'm really excited because we're getting Liam and Sophie's story, and you do kind of see a little bit of them in this book. So yeah, I can't wait to see how that book goes, and I'll share my thoughts on it once I'm done. So I'm now done with Collided, and I'm really excited to talk about this book, so I'm gonna go ahead and share what it's all about, and then I'll go into my thoughts on it. So Collided follows Liam and Sophie, and so the two of them were introduced in the last book. So Sophie is the daughter of the team principal for the Bandini team, which is the team that Noah and Santiago drive for, and then Liam is a driver for the McCoy team, which is basically one of their biggest competitors. So obviously the two of them potentially being together is a little bit forbidden. They also start to become friends as they see each other more and more at all these events, and they kind of have this like flirty banter thing going on between them. And so this one actually kind of overlaps with Throttled. It's pretty much taking place at the same time. We're kind of just like going back and seeing what was happening with Sophie and Liam during that time. So basically Sophie just finished a semester at college, so she decides to convince her dad to let her travel with him for this upcoming season, and so he eventually agrees to it, and she decides to create this like bucket list of things she wants to do while she's traveling, and some of it is like just fun random stuff like go skydiving, do karaoke, stuff like that, but then there's also some other stuff on there that's like a little bit more extreme, more wild, and it kind of becomes this like naughty bucket list pretty much. She's just kind of keeping it to herself. She doesn't tell anyone, but then one night Liam ends up finding it, and he decides that he wants to help her with completing the items on it. So with this book, I really liked it a lot. I really loved the storyline of it. I just thought it was a fun book. I really loved the best friends to lovers trope that was in there. Definitely check trigger warnings for this one. There are kind of some more serious things that happen, and like I said with this book, it does overlap with Throttle. So normally I don't like overlaps in books. Like normally it bothers me because I feel like it can be really repetitive sometimes. Like it's like you're just kind of getting the same story from someone else's perspective, and I feel like you're just kind of seeing like the same scenes but like getting their perspective now. And so normally that's something I don't like because I'm just like, that already happened, like I want to move on and see like new things happening in the story. But with this book I feel like it was fine. Like it didn't feel repetitive at all. There were a few scenes where it overlapped, but you're kind of just like seeing a different side of it. Like obviously in Throttled we're very much focused on Maya and Noah, and so it's just interesting to read this book and see what was going on with like Liam and Sophie the whole time, because in Throttle you're just like so focused on like the drama and like their relationship and everything that was going on there, and all this other stuff was going on too at the same time, and it's like not even mentioned in Throttled. So there's just a lot more to the story that you get in this book. I also feel like it showed a little bit more of Maya and Sophie's friendship, so I really liked that. I feel like we got even more scenes of them in this book, but that's just something I wanted to mention because I was just thinking about it while reading, since I'm not really a fan of like overlapping timelines most of the time. Also with this book, I feel like it was kind of a slow burn, which I did not expect at all. I didn't mind the slow burn, but I just wasn't expecting it with this book. Like I was expecting things to happen very early on in this book. I will say though that because it was a slow burn, at least it felt like a slow burn to me, there was a time in the book where the story kind of slowed down a little bit, and I wasn't bored, but I just wasn't as into the story as I was in the beginning. So when I first started the book, I was really liking it. I was very like into the story, and then it just kind of got to a point in the middle, I guess, or like right before like the 50% mark, I would say, where I definitely slowed down with the reading. Like it kind of took me a few days to actually get through this book, I think, just because it did slow down a little bit in the middle. But then I think once I passed like the 50% mark, I finished the rest of it really quickly, and I ended up really enjoying the story at that point all the way through the end. But anyway, I also really liked seeing these characters. I liked seeing the relationships with them and their families, like Sophie and her dad. Like I said, he is the team principal. Again, with this book, I was kind of getting into like all the F1 stuff and like wanting to know more. Like there was a point in the book where Liam was racing and he had to like stop for like a pit stop, and he's talking to, I'm assuming his team principal, or I don't know, he was talking to someone that's like in charge on his team, and he like asked if they'll be able to do the pit stop in under 2 seconds. That was just crazy to me, like, because I didn't know that they did them that fast, and so I was so curious about that. Like I was like, how do they do it in under 2 seconds? I literally went and started watching TikToks about this, and they do it in under 2 seconds, which is insane. Like I was watching all these TikToks and I just got really into it because I just didn't know this, you know, and I started like scrolling and like watching all these like Formula 1 pit stops of them like changing out the tires, I guess, in like 2 seconds, which is just, it's crazy like how they do it that fast. But yeah, I don't know, I thought it was really interesting. Like I said, this series is like getting me more interested in F1 and like wanting to know more, and I don't know, the more I read it, like the more invested I'm like getting into it. I mean, I have very minimal basic knowledge on F1, but I mean it's better than before I started this series, because like I said, I knew nothing about it before going into this series. But anyway, I went off on a tangent. I was talking about the character Sophie and her dad. I did really love their relationship. I thought it was really sweet. He is a single dad, so it's just always been the two two of them, and they have a really good close relationship, and so I really liked that. And then of course we also see Liam's family, which I did really like them. His parents also were so sweet. I loved them. We like don't even get that much of them, but it was just like fun to see his family. Like his parents are just very much in love, so I just like getting more insight on their lives and like their families and everything. I did really like Sophie as a character. I do feel like there were times though where Sophie kind of came across as like a not like other girls character. There were times where it kind of bordered on like this is a little bit annoying, like she's trying to be like not like other girls, but at the same time I don't really feel like she came across as like the type of person to put other girls down for liking the typically girly things, you know? Like I don't even really feel like she saw herself that way most of the time. But I did really like just kind of seeing what Sophie was going through. She is obviously in college. She doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life, so I really loved seeing her kind of learn more about herself, discover herself, and kind of figure out what she wants. And then I did also just like the whole idea of this book revolving around this list that she creates and her kind of wanting to get out of her comfort zone and do all these like crazy things that she's never done before. Like I don't know, I just thought it was a fun idea of her like doing all of that. And then of course Liam, I did really like him. Obviously he's like helping her with completing this list, and I just really liked the way he was with her. Like I said, I really loved their friendship. He was a little bit frustrating at times because he's totally the type of guy who like doesn't want to commit, but I mean it was fine. I feel like he went through some growth, and I did really love that, and I feel like it was understandable like with what he's gone through, just seeing like why he was the way that he was. And like I said, I just really loved their banter. They were just really fun characters to read. Also, the love confession in this book was so good. I won't go into what happens obviously. I really loved it. It was so good in this book, like one of my favorites that I've read. So I ended up rating this book 5 stars. I really loved it a lot. I've been really loving this series so far. I went into the series like really excited for it and like hoping I would like these books, but I didn't expect to become this obsessed with it and to love it as much as I've been loving it so far. So I thought this one was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was just a really good book to me. I really liked everything about it, and I know that the next two are like the favorites, so that just has me even more excited like to see how those go, because I already really loved the first two, and these next two are supposed to be like amazing, like even better than these. But yeah, like I said, I've been really loving this series so far. I think Throttled is still my favorite so far, just between these two books. Obviously I think I like Throttled more, but I did still obviously really love this book, so I'm excited to continue on. I actually already started reading Wrecked. I'm not very far into it. I think I'm only on like chapter 3 or something, but I started it literally right after I finished Collided because I was so excited to go into it. That one already had a really sad beginning. Like the prologue, I was literally crying in the prologue. Like I wasn't expecting it to be so sad. I've seen people say that it's called Wrecked for a reason. It's going to wreck me apparently, but I can't wait to get into it and see how that book goes. I'm sure I'm gonna love it. I'm already excited because you do kind of see hints at those characters in Collided. Like you get an introduction to Elena, who's the main character in Wrecked, so I can't wait to see how that one goes. I'm gonna go ahead and continue reading it, and then I will come back once I finished it. So I'm now done with Wrecked, so I want to go ahead and share all of my thoughts on it. So just to give a quick summary of this book, it follows Jax and Elena. So Jax is obviously an F1 driver, and then Elena is a PR rep. So basically Jax has been kind of getting into some trouble lately. He kind of needs to clean up his image, fix his reputation. So Elena is hired to be his personal PR rep and basically follow him around and kind of be his babysitter for the next few months, basically through the end of the upcoming F1 season. So obviously Jax was introduced from the very beginning in book 1, and Elena was introduced in book 2 briefly. So in this book she comes back and now she's working solely with Jax for this upcoming season, and she accepts this job because it's a very well paid job and she really needs the money right now. So he doesn't really like the idea of it because he basically has this babysitter. She's going to be with him throughout the entire season. She's going to be working closely with him, staying in the same hotel room as him. So it's obviously forced proximity. It's also kind of enemies to lovers because they do not get along at all in the beginning. So that's kind of mainly what this book is. Jax is kind of going through a lot. You get to see a lot of him and his personal life. He also deals with anxiety and he does take medication for it, so his anxiety is a huge part of this story. You see a lot of Elena's past, which also plays a very big role into their story. So I said earlier in this video, I'm pretty sure, that Wrecked is one of the favorites of the series, and I can definitely see why. I absolutely loved this one. It was just such a good story. I really loved these characters. Elena especially, she was just such a strong character, and you see so much of what she's gone through, and she's gone through a lot. She's had a very difficult life, so I just really love kind of seeing where she is now and seeing the fact that she is who she is, and like she's gone through so much and she's just come out really strong after everything that she's experienced in her life. And then Jax, I loved seeing more of him, especially because I feel like in the first 2 books he's just very private about his life, doesn't really talk about his family or anything going on with him, and so I just loved kind of getting to know him better and kind of seeing this other side of him that you didn't really see before in the first 2 books. And I just really loved seeing his development. He was really sweet. Like the things he did for her were really sweet. I feel like he was kind of supposed to be this like bad boy type, but he turns around very quickly when he starts to fall for her, and I really loved seeing that. And I just really loved the development of the relationship, like the way that they helped each other. They kind of both have some really dark and difficult pasts, so I just really loved seeing the way they helped each other through that, the way they were there for each other, and the way they kind of became like each other's comfort, you know, like he felt better when he was around her. Obviously, like I said, it kind of is enemies to lovers, so I also really liked that they started off like not really liking each other, not getting along at all. So like on top of them having just a really amazing relationship, it was also really fun reading the way that they would like tease each other and like give each other a hard time when they didn't really like each other as much. I also really loved the side characters in this book. You kind of get introduced to a few new characters, one of them being Elena's best friend. I also really loved Jax's parents. You get introduced to them, and I really loved their story. You kind of get like little pieces of it, and I really loved their relationship. Honestly, I feel like I could read a whole book on his parents. I think it would make an amazing story between those two characters. Like just the little pieces that you get of it, like you know they have a really amazing story together. So I don't know why, I just became like so attached to them and their story just from like the little bit that I read of it. I also of course love seeing all the other side characters, like the past couples, Maya and Noah, and Sophie and Liam, and then Santiago. You do kind of get some scenes with them, and that was a lot of fun because obviously I really enjoyed those books too, so I really loved seeing them once again in this book. But I just loved every aspect of this book. Even like the third act conflict, it made me upset honestly, but I really liked that. Like it made me upset in a way that I was just like so invested in this story and like actually feeling these emotions for these characters, you know. Definitely check trigger warnings for this one. This one had me crying in the prologue. Like from the beginning I was already crying when I read it. I was fine throughout the book though, like I didn't cry while I was reading it, and then once I finished it, like right when I got to the end, I started crying again. I mean, it was a happy ending. All these books, they're romances, they have happy endings, but this one just like really got to me. But I just really loved it. I loved their love story and I loved the ending. Also, the extended epilogue was really good. It was so sweet. I fell in love with this story. It was really good. This one of course was another 5-star read for me. So after reading this book, it did become my favorite of the series. I did like it more than Throttled, but I feel like I'd be more likely to reread Throttled just because that one was more of like a fun time while reading it, you know. Like for the most part, that one still had some like heavier things in there. I think with all of these, like there's definitely some heavy topics and like triggering content, you know. It just obviously kind of depends on your own personal experience. But with Throttled, that one was kind of like the lightest in a way of these books, and so I feel like that one was just like more of like a fun time. I enjoyed reading it, whereas this one was just like kind of a different type of story, but I still really loved it a lot. So this one, after reading it, was my new favorite of the series. However, I did immediately go into Redeemed after finishing it because I just needed to read that book immediately. I knew that that one was like the top favorite of this series. Like so many people absolutely adore that book. So now going into my thoughts on Redeemed, which is the final book in the Dirty Air series. So let me go into a little summary of what it's about first. So Redeemed follows Chloe and Santiago. Santiago is Maya's brother. Maya is the main character from book 1, so we've been introduced to him since the very beginning. Chloe is a brand new character that we meet in this book. So in this book, Santiago's career is basically over. He has not been doing very well because of what's happened in his life, and then he ends up meeting Chloe. So Chloe, she is from New York. She's had a very difficult life growing up. She does not have a good relationship with her mother at all, and at this point she's 24 years old. She's always been curious about who her dad is, so she decides to try to find him somehow. She ends up finding a connection to a man in Italy. So she goes to Italy to try to find her father, and that's where she runs into Santiago. And basically, I don't want to get into too much of like how or why it happens, but the two of them start fake dating. There's kind of more to that story, but it's not in the synopsis in the back of the book, so I don't want to give that away. But basically the two of them start fake dating. It kind of just starts off as something really small, like it's kind of a bit of a misunderstanding in a way. They just kind of go along with it, and then it basically just spirals into something way bigger, and now they're like in this whole fake relationship. But the story basically just goes from there. Obviously with fake dating comes forced proximity, and of course them starting to fall for each other for real. So Redeemed was just incredible, and I cannot get over how much I loved it. It was just amazing. It was an amazing story. It was such a beautiful story. I could go on and on about it. I know I'm going to continue to talk about this book all the time now because I just loved it so much, but this one was just so good. It's definitely the best one in the series, and these characters, they're definitely my favorites. Santiago is my favorite of the guys, and then Chloe is my favorite of the girls, and then just them as a couple, they're my favorites. They might even be my favorite Laura and Asher couple. I'm not sure, because my favorite before them, before I even read this series, series was Declan and Iris from Terms and Conditions. Chloe and Santiago might be my new favorites. I don't know, I have to think about it a little bit longer. I really loved their relationship. It was just so sweet. Just the way they were together, the way that they were just so comfortable around each other and like were able to turn to each other. I just really loved that. And just like the simplicity of their relationship, like the things that they did together, like they were just so like domestic with each other. This book reminded me a lot of Sweet Nothing by Taylor Swift. That song was just in my head during like all their little moments together. I just feel like that song perfectly describes their relationship. And honestly, they're one of my favorite book couples that I've ever read. Just the way that their relationship developed, the way that they helped each other. I just loved seeing them kind of heal from their trauma and, like I said, just kind of be there for each other. Santiago undergoes so much development and you see how much he appreciates her because of what she's done for him and how she's helped him, and then he's able to do the same in return and finally like show her some appreciation because she's just gone through life with not a lot of people caring about her or like appreciating who she is. And Santiago was just amazing. Like I said, he's my favorite of the guys of this series. I loved kind of getting more of him, seeing more of him as a character, especially because he was introduced since the beginning of the series, since Throttled. And then with Chloe, I loved meeting her. She was just such a good character. She was just so fun to read. Like she just has such a positive outlook on life and I really loved that. And I just loved seeing her kind of learn about love and experiencing that with Santiago. And I just really loved what they brought out in each other. Another kind of trope of this book is Grumpy Sunshine. So he's the grumpy one and she's the sunshine. And I love that trope. It's one of my favorite tropes. So I loved seeing that with these two characters. And it was just really fun seeing these characters come together, especially in the beginning. Like I loved their initial meeting. They kind of banter back and forth a little bit too, and I loved reading that, especially with their whole dynamic of being like Grumpy Sunshine, you know. And this one was a pretty long book too, but I finished it so quickly because of how much I was just loving it that I kept wanting to read it. I couldn't put it down, so it didn't even feel as long as it was. And honestly, so much happens in this book. Like it's a very filled book. Like there's just a lot going on. I just felt like there was so much to this story and so much that I wanted to see with these characters, so I just kept reading it. And I also just feel like you get so much out of this story. There's so much to it, and like I said, it's just such a beautiful story. And of course in this book you do get to see some of the side characters once again, so I really loved seeing that, especially Noah and Maya. You do get a lot of them, of course. And another thing I really loved was the friendship between Santiago and Noah. And I kind of already talked about this, but I do really love seeing the found family among these characters, and you really get to see it in this one. You see Chloe kind of being accepted into their group and into their family, but this book didn't really have a lot of the other side characters. They are there, but just not as much as in the other books, so I do wish that we had seen a little bit more of them. But I mean, with this book it also had the least amount of F1 content, but it is still part of the story, just not as much as the other books. I think that this one was just a very different kind of story compared to the other ones. I would say that the last two books especially were kind of just more different. Like there was a lot more to them. They were much more than just like the romance and like the F1, you know? I mean, all these books definitely had more to them than just the romance and F1, but the last two especially were kind of just like heavier books, had a lot more to their story. I feel like this book was just very much a story of these characters kind of overcoming hardships and also just realizing their worth and kind of learning that they can still have the things they want in life after everything that they've experienced. I think this book was also very much like a love story between these two characters, but on top of that, it's just a story of all these different types of love too. Like you see so many different types of relationships in this book. So this book was just amazing. I could keep going on and on about it because I just loved everything about it so much. It was just such a good book, such a good story. I really loved seeing the way that this series wrapped up with this book. I feel like this was such an incredible end to the series, even though I really didn't want it to end. Like I was loving this book so much, and the closer I got to the end of it, the more sad I was getting about it because I knew that I was getting close to finishing out this entire series. But I also love how it ended, especially the extended epilogue. The extended epilogue was perfect. It was so good. It made me so happy. I was smiling the whole time while reading it. It was just so cute. It also hints at some stuff to come in the future. I know that Lauren Asher has plans to write another series called Dirty Heirs, like Heirs, so it'll be like a second generation story about the children. I know she said she plans to write it eventually, so I can't wait to get that because I need more of these characters and I need more of this world. But anyway, like I said, I really love how this series kind of sets things up for more in the future. I hope that that comes soon because I am already so excited for the idea of that. So this book was obviously another 5-star rating, like all these books have been, but this one was kind of like above the rest. Like it was just even more incredible than the other books. I obviously loved this entire series, but book 4 was my favorite of the series. Like I said, it's one of my favorites that I've read this year. I think it might be my favorite Lauren Asher book. I'm still not sure on that, but I absolutely loved it. I'll probably continue to rave about these books in the future, especially Redeemed. But anyway, going into just some final wrap-up thoughts on the series. First, I'll share my ranking. I feel like it was kind of obvious maybe, but my favorite was obviously Redeemed, and then next is Wrecked, and then Throttled, Throttled, and then Collided. But obviously I did love all of them. It's definitely like one of my new all-time favorite series that I've ever read. But I've now read all of Lauren Asher's books, and they've actually all been 5-star reads for me. Obviously these 4 books were 5 stars, and then with the Dreamland Billionaire series I also rated those 3 books 5 stars. So every book that I read by her has been a 5-star book. But I just love her writing. I love her books. I am so excited to continue reading her in the future. She's obviously one of my favorite authors. I'm excited for her new series that's coming out this November. But yeah, now I'm done with all her books, and that kind of makes me sad because like I said, I love her. I love her books, so I don't have any more to read at this point. But I'm also glad that I finally read them all. I'm glad that I finally read this series. I can't believe I put it off for so long, especially considering how much I loved it. But honestly, I didn't even expect to love it as much as I did. But either way, I'm glad that I finally read it and I found some new favorite books. So that is it for this video. That was my reading vlog for the Dirty Air series. Please let me know any of your thoughts if you have read these books. And if you liked this and you're new to my channel, I would love it if you would subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.